Now, if Africans and African Americans had a brotherhood, this method and this philosophy would be the most powerful philosophy to our people if they have a brotherhood. Africans don't mess with you like that. Now, Africans will do commerce with us and they will do business with us on a business basis. But there is no brotherhood amongst us.
Through my mother, I'm Seminole and African. Through my father, African, Cherokee, Choctaw, and Shawnee. And I spent part of my boyhood in Florida. You know, we're talking what I call post-invasion. Well, I look at October 12, 1492 as the jump-off point because we're talking about an event that would trigger a massive escalation of the transatlantic slave trade and the invasion of the hemisphere. So after that particular point in time, you know, the two groups of people came together under crisis conditions throughout the hemisphere. I mean, we can talk about instances of unity as well as instances of divide and conquer. I don't know if we can say 50-50, but it still goes on today. Goodness, we see this happening in places like among some communities like the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma and even the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, where there's been turmoil about trying to sometime evict, yes, and please quote me, evict some members of the tribe from the tribal roles. Those have tended to be what they call freedmen, which tend to be those largely of African descent.
If you understand the history of African American and Native American peoples in this country, we had some things in common. Once the communication barrier was taken care of, then Native people and African peoples realized that there was so much in common culturally. For instance, the drum. The drum is the heartbeat of the nation.
It became quite a thing to flee into Florida by the hundreds, and it was quite productive. They could raise crops right next to the Indians. They married Indians. They became a part of the frontier. They raised their families. They raised their grandchildren, and they died right here in Florida.
The blacks and Seminoles discover they have much in common. Many African traditions, including social structures and religious beliefs, are very similar to those of the Indians. But nothing strengthens their bond more than a common enemy.
It seems every so often there's a movement in the black community with the sole purpose to disassociate black people, primarily African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and Afro-Latinos, from Africa. In 2014, I came up close and personal with a few different sects of Hebrew Israelites. Many of these brothers were preaching that black people in the Americas, both North and South, were not African, but instead Hebrew Israelites. I found this very confusing based on my own studies and research, as well as basic common sense. I have since met different sects of Israelites who, although they believe in and practice the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, they also acknowledge that they are indeed of African descent, and Africa is their motherland. But this video isn't about the Israelites. I do have a video about them, which I'll place in the description for you to watch afterwards. Around this time last year, I started getting a lot of brothers and sisters telling me, Angel, we're not Africans or of African descent. We're native to this land. We're aboriginals. We're indigenous to the Americas. We were here first. And we didn't come from Africa. We weren't enslaved and kidnapped in Africa. It was all done here. At first, I kind of ignored it. I've read and studied on this quite in depth and noticed that a lot of the information being spouted is just being misinterpreted or simply speculation and assumptions. There's no actual evidence to truly back these statements to the point that they become unquestionable as tangible evidence. I've even heard brothers and sisters talk about Malcolm X referring to himself as Aboriginal. Although he did, he was using the word Aboriginal as a synonym for black. But after so many people kept approaching me with these questions, I decided to do further research. And this is what this video is about. I remember being a teenager and reading a few books by Ivan Van Sertima. They came before Columbus, African Presence in Early Europe, and Early America Revisited. Ivan Van Sertima teaches, based on his studies, that African explorers traveled and migrated across the globe before the Europeans, Arabs, or Asians. Ivan Van Sertima challenged and set the record straight regarding the myth that Christopher Columbus discovered America. But before I get into that, some people believe that black people were in the Americas before anyone else and are the true first inhabitants. But the question has to be, how did they get here and where did they come from? We're aware that human life started in Africa. Black people migrated out of Africa as Homo sapiens thousands of years after the Neanderthals, who left Africa prior. However, the point where the out-of-Africa theory becomes incorrect is the theory that black Africans lost melanin and their features changed based on climate and food as they discovered new lands, implying that white people are merely albino Africans. We know this to be false, because Caucasians were created by Homo sapiens breeding with Neanderthals in the Caucasus regions outside of Africa, thus creating a hybrid which would eventually be known as the European, the Caucasian, the white man. Asians and Australasians were created in a similar way, but with the introduction of Denisovan DNA, as well as some Neanderthal DNA. If you want more details on the out-of-Africa theory and the creation of Caucasians, there's also a video in the description called How the Caucasian Race Was Created, so check it out. So long story short, based on common sense, anthropology, and history, if black people were in Americas first, then of course the Native Americans had to have traveled from Africa, which is taught by many scholars. Therefore, if you believe that you are a Native American or an Aboriginal American, aka a Black American, then you are in fact African because you came from Africa. Seems so simple and basic, right? But there are some people that don't believe in the out of Africa theory at all, not one iota. And they believe we didn't migrate from Africa to the Americas, but instead, we were already here. This is highly incorrect, as there is no evidence to corroborate this. All black life definitely started in Africa. We were the first humans, and we created all varying degrees of mankind. We traveled the globe first and inhabited many places. For example, you had Papua New Guineans who look just like African people or black people, same features, same type of woolly hair, but they're indigenous to Papua New Guinea. And they're not African, right? Wrong. They also migrated out of Africa thousands of years ago. Now let's discuss the Native Americans as the commonly depicted Native Americans throughout history, the ones with red skin, being in the Americas as the first inhabitants and how they got to the Americas. Anthropology states that two main groups of what we now call the Native Americans traveled out of Asia 23,000 years ago. They believe the groups splintered off from an East Asian population. The group from Northeast Asia crossed the Bering Land Bridge, known as the Bering Strait, between Northeast Asia and Alaska, eventually making their way to the rest of the Americas. They also state that 10,000 years later, or about 13,000 years ago, Native Americans started to split into different groups, creating different tribes across North and South America. However, anthropologists divided the migration groups into two. One is the first Americans, being Northeast Asian, and another they identify as Population Y, which carried ancestry more closely related to indigenous Australians. That's your Aboriginals with dark skin and straight to wavy hair from Australia. This explains why some Native Americans are shown in images with very dark skin and straight hair. These are descendants of the Australian Aboriginals. These Aboriginals would have also been victims of slavery. So if you believe that you are an American Aboriginal or a descendant, you're implying that you are a descendant of the Australian Aboriginals who migrated into the Americas along with the Northeast Asians, who had straight or wavy loose curled hair. So I have to ask you, if you're an Aboriginal of America, why is your hair Afro-textured? As you'll all agree, you may have seen images of dark-skinned Native Americans and also Australian Aboriginals, but their hair has never been Afro-textured. Native Americans today can trace their ancestry to Eurasian migrants with Australasian ancestry, which adds tangible evidence and proof to the research and studies. So this would of course mean that there would have been darker-skinned Native Americans as well as lighter-skinned Native Americans, based on these two groups. What I will say, if you believe you are an Aboriginal of the Americas, take a DNA test. It will show if you have Australasian or Eurasian ancestry as well as Native American ancestry. And if it comes back instead with countries from Africa, well, self-hate is a hell of a drug. But self-love is an incredible cure. Also, the oldest bones and artifacts correlate with this information. Now, how do African people or black people fit into this migration? Are the so-called African Americans descendants of the dark-skinned, straight-haired Australian Aboriginals? No, their hair alone would tell you different. As I stated, Australian Aboriginals were created by Homo sapien and Denisovan DNA as well as some Neanderthal DNA, hence why they look different to the black Papua New Guineans, who still look like African people. The teachings that Africans came before Columbus was not based on mass migration of huge numbers of African people to the Americas before these Eurasians and Australasian peoples. It was after this migration, but before Columbus discovered the Americas and the natives. Now I say discover, but he didn't discover America. Firstly, you can't discover a people in a continent that was already here, had their own culture and civilization. There's overwhelming evidence that proves that African people regularly sailed across the Atlantic to the Americas, thousands of years before Columbus. Ancient civilizations from Egypt and West African countries traveled to the Americas teaching the natives how to build a civilization. They brought with them the art of pyramid building, political systems, and religious practices, as well as mathematics, writing, and a sophisticated calendar. And if you don't believe me, well, maybe you'll believe a white man. Christopher Columbus himself wrote in his journal, black-skinned people had come from the southeast in boats, trading in gold-tipped spears. This was documented in 1920 by renowned American historian and linguist Leo Weiner of Harvard University in his book Africa and the Discovery of America. One of the first documented instances of Africans sailing and settling in the Americas were black Egyptians led by King Ramses III during the 19th dynasty in 1292 BC. In 1311 AD, another major wave of African exploration to the New World was led by King Abu Bakari II, the ruler of the 14th century Mali Empire, which was larger than the Roman Empire. The king sent out 200 ships of men and 200 ships of trade material, crops, animals, cloth, and African knowledge of astronomy, religion, and art. Travel in the seas and oceans was not a European invention, but in fact was started by the African people. In the early 1940s, archaeologists uncovered a civilization known as the Olmecs of 1200 BC, which predated any other advanced civilization in the Americas. The Olmec civilization, which was of African origin and dominated by Africans. This was the first significant civilization in the Americas. Olmecs are known for the giant carved heads found in central Mexico that have unmistakable African Negroid features. Historian Professor Ivan van Sertima explains how Olmecs were the first Mesoamerican civilization to use a written language, sophisticated astronomy, arts, and mathematics, and they built the first cities in Mexico, all of which greatly influenced the Mayans and other Native American civilizations. Africans played an integral role in the Olmec Empire's rise, and that African influence was happening during the same period as the ancient Black Egyptian civilization. Need more evidence? Easy. They found narcotics, cocaine, and nicotine native to America inside ancient Egyptian mummies. These substances are only derived from American plants. This could only happen by trade between Africa and America. Need more? They found statues of animals like lions, elephants, and gorillas, which are not found in the Americas, but in Africa in Native American civilization. The Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas all worship black gods. They have paintings and surviving artwork that show dark-skinned gods with Negro features with woolly hair. But one of the major things is American pyramids. Pyramid construction is highly specialized. Ancient Egyptians started out with the step pyramids and eventually progressed to the smooth pyramids you see in Giza. But in Levanta, Mexico, the Olmecs made a fully finished pyramid. The Olmecian and Egyptian periods were both placed on the same north-south axis and had the same construction methods. Both the pyramids in America and Africa served the same dual purpose, tombs and temples. What I'm telling you is only a tiny fraction of the similarities. The Olmecs created and carved the heads of the African explorers who came from Africa and taught them about religion, mathematics, astronomy, civilization, and so much more, to forever praise them and show gratitude for the gifts Africa gave to the Americas. Clearly, Africans helped civilize America way before Europeans even knew America existed, and way before Europeans claimed to have civilized Africa. So now you know that African people definitely discovered the Americas before the Europeans. You know they civilized the Native Americans. You know there was 2 waves of Native American migrations. People from Northeast Asia, the lighter skin group, and Australasian Aborigines, the darker skin group. Even if you believe your ancestors were already here before anyone else, you still had to come from Africa. They still had to migrate from Africa. Therefore, you're African. But take a DNA test and see for yourself. Africa built the world. Don't be ashamed of being a descendant of Africa. There will be 2 videos in my description. One about Hebrew Israelites, and one about how the Caucasian race was created. Like I said, check it out. Don't be fooled by misinformation and propaganda. We are African. Peace, love, and coconut oil. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at angel_IKYG.
Now, if Africans and African Americans had a brotherhood, this method and this philosophy would be the most powerful philosophy to our people if they have a brotherhood. Africans don't mess with you like that. Now, Africans will do commerce with us, and they will do business with us on a business basis. But there is no brotherhood amongst us. Now, this is something very important, and this is something very controversial in our community. Because we have a group of people going around telling our children that they're nothing more than a bootleg African. We have a group of people in our community going around telling our children that they're nothing more than a knockoff African or misfit African. And they don't understand the psychology of what they're saying and what they're telling their own children. Now, most of the bootleg Africans have a connection with Africa and a fantasy type of role with Africa. And because of this make-believe fantasy type of role with Africa, and somehow it empowers them and it makes them feel good. Now, we have been told that we came from Africa, and there's nothing wrong with coming from Africa, and obviously some of us did come from Africa, but so what we intend to do psychologically is we begin to embrace Africa. Now, they downgraded Africa, and they showed us terrible parts of Africa, and they showed us, dirty parts of Africa, and somehow we mustered up a way to be proud of Africa, with the pyramids, and they're the first to walk, and they're the first men, and we figured out different ways to be proud Africans. We figured out a way to be a proud African and be proud. So what we did, them telling us we was African and downgrading us and calling us names and showing little sick babies in Ethiopia. We took that and we flipped it upside down and we said, you know what? I am a proud, unapologetic African, and I'm proud of the pyramids we built, and we switched it around. Now this is something very good that we did, because we did that as a community, and this is very powerful. But this is where it takes a turn at. Now, the belief is that somehow we're going to go over to Africa and we're going to reunite Africa, and we're going to close off Africa, and we're going to keep everything for ourselves, and we're just going to rule the world, and we're going to be like living in Wakanda type of deal. And so this is a fantasy that we have we have implemented in our culture. And this is actually a good tactic, and this is actually very powerful, and it's actually something that is possible. And so because of this philosophy and because of this analogy, a lot of us are proud to be African, and we will wait the day that somehow we reunite with Africa and become this big African utopia. Now, this is a very good story, and it's also very possible. But the only thing is that Africans look at you like a bootleg. You're nothing more than a bootleg Africans. Okay? And so it is a very hard pill to swallow. I understand. Now, if Africans and African Americans had a brotherhood, this method and this philosophy would be the most powerful philosophy to our people if they have a brotherhood. Africans don't mess with you like that. Now, Africans will do commerce with us, and they will do business with us on a business basis. But there is no brotherhood amongst us.
That shit is annoying. For real, bruh. I mean, your dad always talking out the sides of their face. Talking about somebody repping 79th, all that nonsense, Southside, all that stupid shit. Stupid shit.
What's up, G? What size is them Jordans?
They my size. That's what size are y'all.
Oh, you think you got heart, huh? Well, guess what, little nigga? Hearts ain't bulletproof.
Hey, why don't y'all just keep it moving? Y'all not your neighborhood anyway.
Nigga, what you talking about? Y'all know our crew run this whole neighborhood. We run this whole shit. Hey, yo, shorty, run them kicks. Man, y'all niggas ain't shit. Yeah, I said it. Nigga, this our block. You know that? Unless you really want to do it. We out. Alright. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, keep it pushing.
Now, if Africans and African Americans had a brotherhood, this method and this philosophy would be the most powerful philosophy to our people if they have a brotherhood. Africans don't mess with you like that. Now, Africans will do commerce with us, and they will do business with us on a business basis. But there is no brotherhood amongst us, because to them, you're nothing more than a bootleg version of them. It's a very hard pill to swallow. I understand. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry about this, and I'm sorry about this story, but it has to be told. Now, this utopia of Africa that people been talking about, and all the land and the resources and the gold, and it's ours, and we're going to go get it. This is a very powerful message. So don't knock it. It's very powerful. But there's only one thing that just doesn't make sense, is that Africans don't fuck with you. There's no brotherhood amongst you. You see? Now, if there was a brotherhood amongst African and African Americans, this story and this philosophy would be very powerful. Now, it has been powerful for a long time, but there's a new movement coming up and arriving on the scene, and I actually sponsored the movement. Now, help sponsor the movement. I should say. And it's the indigenous movement. And this is where it takes a toll. Because a lot of people understand the indigenous movement, but they just don't want to accept it. Some people just don't accept it, and some people just can't swallow the information because the brain is a defensive tool. It's not supposed to believe you. That's its job. Their brain is doing its job. It's not supposed to believe Ty Data. Ty Data's a coon swirler, gay or whatever. That's what your brain's supposed to tell itself because it's protecting yourself against me. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you keep watching this video, it might hurt your feelings. And it's a very powerful message. So, if you don't want to hear it, I suggest you turn and you never watch anything I do again. But if you have told your brain that I am the curler, swirler, coon, gay dude on YouTube or whatever the hell you got, cool. You sit down and you listen. Now, most people don't understand the indigenous movement and the indigenous philosophy. So when they try to debunk it, most likely they prove it farther. Now the most common thing is that when it comes to the Olmec Empire. Now, if you want to get homage to the Olmec Empire, because this is Olmec's land and this is Olmec's empire, if you want to get homage to them, then there is no problem with joining indigenous movement based on homage to the indigenous people. Not claiming you're one, but just giving homage to them, respect to them, using their powers, using their systems to better yourself, their spiritual system, and embracing their information and embrace what they have to offer to the world. Now, you can still be a Chinese, an African, or whatever, just simply respecting the people and the culture, land you're on. Now, those of you who believe you are a descendant of the Olmec Empire, and that's okay as well. But this is where it takes a quick turn. Now, for every document that says you came from Africa, there's another document that says you've been here. For every book that says you came from Africa, there's a book that says you've been here. Every description of what people saw when they came here looks like you. Every description from people over there says it looks like you. So it's a never-ending battle, because if you do a Google search on black people being slaves coming from Africa, a whole list of stuff is going to come up. If you do a Google search on the so-called black people was here in America, you're going to find it. So it all boils down into what you're looking for. Because chances are, if you're looking for us to be from Africa, you're going to find it, and you're going to find lots of it. Also, if you're looking for us to be descendants of the Olmec Empire, you're going to find it. And so with that being said, we're going to have to go into a different mode to break down the movement. Now, when you say Africans came over to the Americas and they helped them build, and they helped the people who was here already. Now keep in mind, they claim that there was people here already. So when the Africans came over here and helped them build the pyramids and helped them civilize themselves and helped them do things, do you think that the Africans just came over here and just left? Or do you think they actually stayed? Now, if Africans and the African Americans had a brotherhood, this method and this philosophy would be the most powerful philosophy to our people if they have a brotherhood. Africans don't mess with you like that. Now, Africans will do commerce with us, and they will do business with us on a business basis. But there is no brotherhood amongst us.
That shit is annoying. For real, bruh. I mean, your dad always talking out the sides of their face. Talking about some they repping 79th, all that nonsense, Southside, all that stupid shit. Stupid shit.
What's up, G? What size is them Jordans? They my size. That's what size they are. Oh, you think you got heart, huh? Well, guess what, little nigga? Hearts ain't bulletproof.
Hey, why don't y'all just keep it moving? Y'all not your neighborhood anyway.
Nigga, what you talking about? Y'all know I could run this whole neighborhood. We run this whole shit. Hey, yo, shorty, run them kicks. Man, y'all niggas ain't shit. Yeah, I said it. Nigga, this our block. You know that? Unless you really want to do it. We out. Alright. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, keep it pushing. Out of here, man. Good chat, nigga. Yo, thanks, young. Ain't nothing. What's up, Jay? Heard you bought out this season.
Hey, you know, trying to do my thing.
Man, coach already talking about bumping up to varsity next year.
Word? That's good, man. Keep putting in work. You know, that's how you get to the big leagues, like D Rose and D Wade. Y'all need anything, though? Y'all straight?
Be cool.
I got something for y'all, man. I know how it be being a little homie, you know? I know y'all cool. Be cooler. Ben Frank style. Gotta keep the little homies fresh, you feel me? Yo, thanks, yummy. Y'all gonna be family soon anyway, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I remember you had an interview a while back, and you said that America was never built for black people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
I mean, it's just simple. We weren't. I mean, you gotta understand, black people were shipped here. It ain't like they chose to be here. Trust me, hadn't they not been brought here, they wouldn't be here. They'd be in Africa right now, and this world probably be totally different as far as what happens. America probably wouldn't exist. The way I see it is, it hurts me and pains me a lot that, you know, African Americans constantly complain about how they're being treated in America and how the laws ain't fair and how it don't fit the minorities when they actually can always just go back home.
The world is a place for black people. But meaning that black people didn't choose to be in America. They were forced.
Well, we didn't choose to be under this system. First of all, there's a lot of evidence that is coming up recently that's showing that we was already here. That we are the fucking Indians. We are the fucking Indians that they found here. And in order to make us not rebel crazily, they made us think we was from somewhere else. Now,
what?
Listen. You get here, right? Columbus and them motherfuckers get here.
Mm-hmm.
They got guns and all of that, so they fucking subdue, you know, the older generation or whatever. But the older generation is always going to fight and always going to hold on to their shit. So you go to the next generation now, who doesn't know. We were talking about the disconnect before. Just in one generation, from you know what I mean? One generation, motherfuckers don't know who Big Daddy Kane is. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So imagine you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations. Even in just that one generation, if I separate you from your parent and tell you, you know, you're really from Africa. We stole you from Africa and brought you across the sea and brought you to this land that is not yours. So your land is actually somewhere over there. There's a big percentage. This is why black people and American Indians have always had a certain camaraderie.
You're saying that there are Native Americans that look like they're Africans.
Yes.
Already in this country.
Yes. And there's statues and all kind of shit to prove it. But even in South America, like, look at some of the statues, the old necks, all that type of shit. These motherfuckers have African features. Not Hispanic, not Indian, African. So you gotta understand, we've been here for so long. I'm saying original people have been here for so long that there's nothing we haven't done and nowhere we haven't been. Okay? There is no fucking place that white people have discovered on this planet. Anywhere that white people have gone, anywhere, they will find the original man was already there. If you really do your research, there were black people in Europe for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years before there's any record of any white people coming there, and they were still black. What's the geographical weather shit there? Like, white people are an anomaly. Like, they just came onto the scene.
Brand new.
Brand new.